Up air travel security is still being blocked by House Republican leaders. They object to a provision that would federalize airport security workers. Despite unanimous Senate passage tonight, Republican opponents in the House and their allies in the private airline security business do not want to take over by government workers. On this fifth day and night of airstrikes in Afghanistan, U.S. pilots may have had fewer targets to choose from. It looks that way. But as CBS News national security correspondent David Martin reports, the official version is they hit those targets harder than ever.
A huge explosion on the outskirts of Kabul is the most vivid example of the damage the airstrikes are doing. But according to Defense Secretary Rumsfeld, not the only example.
I have seen several examples where there were enormous secondary explosions, in some cases that went on for several hours.
Gun camera video shows the fiery aftermath of an attack on a surface-to-air missile site. Before and after satellite photos show the damage done to a Taliban military garrison and to a line of fighter aircraft. Those targets are easily spotted from the air, but some targets are being spotted from the ground by CIA teams operating with the rebel army known as the Northern Alliance.
We are obviously receiving communications from the Northern Alliance. It's possible to use that in target planning.
American jets can now orbit over Kabul in broad daylight, but Secretary Rumsfeld says there is still a threat from anti-aircraft fire.
And it is AAA, and it's man-portable surface-to-air missiles, and I believe one or more surface-to-air missiles of considerably greater capability.
Shoulder-fired Stinger missiles cannot reach high enough to shoot down a bomber, but they are deadly against helicopters. U.S. helicopters are positioned both north and south of Afghanistan, in Uzbekistan and Pakistan, ready to pick up any downed pilots. So far, they haven't been used, but there almost certainly will come a day when helicopters carry commandos into Afghanistan in pursuit of Osama bin Laden. Although a senior British officer indicated it could be a long time before the bombing ends and the manhunt begins.
We must expect at least to go through the winter and into next summer at the very least, because with winter coming on in November, things will slow down a bit.
The bombing campaign is not likely to kill bin Laden, but the U.S. and Britain are counting on it to flush him out.
We'll actually flush him out and be flushed out by an Afghanistani person who doesn't support him probably in the first instance, and when he finds out, he'll tell us and we'll do something about it.
But Secretary Rumsfeld warns even if bin Laden were captured or killed tomorrow, his terrorist network would keep on operating without missing a beat. Dan?
David Martin reporting live from the Defense Department. The Pentagon today identified the first American serviceman to die in Operation Enduring Freedom. 36-year-old Air Force Master Sergeant Evander Earl Andrews from Solon, Maine, was killed in what is said to have been a heavy equipment accident on the Arabian Peninsula. Officials also reported that a U.S. soldier was seriously injured yesterday in another accident in Uzbekistan. On the ground in Afghanistan, Taliban officials say U.S. attacks have killed more than 200 people, including, they say, many civilians. Those claims cannot be confirmed. But from behind the northern lines of the anti-Taliban alliance, which calls itself the United Front, CBS's Elizabeth Palmer can confirm the intensity of the air campaign.
Tonight, U.S. warplanes continued to rain bombs on Taliban troops, weaponry, and military compounds outside Kabul. But during daylight today, a new tactic. For the first time, jets screamed through the clear blue skies above the capital city, sending residents scrambling for cover just as they were picking up the pieces and putting out the fires from last night's bombings. Afghanistan's southernmost city, Kandahar, was hammered yet again, suffering a direct hit on a munitions dump. Warplanes targeted a compound near the airport where bin Laden followers have been living. The eastern city of Jalalabad, believed to be a center for al-Qaeda guerrilla training camps, was among the worst hit. In the north, the United Front is claiming important victories. Leaders say they've captured 2 major provinces and the main roads which have allowed them to choke off Taliban supply routes. But these are not necessarily combat victories. Rather, many of them are brokered deals based on ethnic ties, convenience, or even cash. Qazi Kabir, the local commander here in Hojabahauddin, remembers how almost all of northern Afghanistan fell to the Taliban 3 years ago because many commanders simply sold out. Certainly money changed hands, he says, even though in Islam this kind of betrayal is a sin. But I'd rather not talk about the details. It's too dangerous. It's important to note that the general who's been making the most decisive gains for the United Front here in the past few weeks 5 years ago was fighting for the Taliban. It's a reminder that the United Front, also known as the Northern Alliance, is not really a unified, cohesive army at all. Rather, it's a very fragile and volatile coalition. Dan?
Live from northern Afghanistan, Elizabeth Palmer. In Afghanistan's eastern and southern neighbor Pakistan, the government is stepping up efforts to discourage anti-American protests. It's not an easy task, what with U.S. military transports now delivering U.S. troops to Pakistani air bases in the south. CBS's Richard Roth is in Islamabad.
Pakistan's drawn a line on dissent. The government today warned that tougher laws and troops will be used to keep a lid on street violence. As they were drawing up their law and order battle plan, officials struggled to deal with a volatile new ingredient in the mix. The report that U.S. troops are now deployed at 2 Pakistani air bases. For government officials, it was just the news they didn't need, a red flag to the protest movement. They called the report inaccurate and misleading until tonight, when Pakistan's interior minister admitted it's true.
They can put their spares, they can put their petrol, or they can use some of those facilities, even medical facilities.
But what American GIs can't do, he says, is attack Afghanistan from here.
It's not a free-for-all show.
Even so, hardline clerics are still whipping up support for the Taliban regime that Pakistan's government has abandoned, and showing contempt for the American alliance Pakistan has embraced.
When you see a Western power, and the US particularly, attacking the Afghans, attacking what is a Muslim country, then the Muslim allegiance switches in.
But these pictures, says political scientist Ifat Malik, need perspective.
The majority of people are unhappy, they resent it, but not to the extent that they would resort to violence.
If they do, harsh treatment's now promised, including to refugees. Any caught contributing to violence, the government says, will be sent home to Afghanistan. Richard Roth, CBS News, Islamabad.